And we're back with another episode of Life Changing Challengers. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this one's going to be epic. You haven't heard stories like you're going to hear today. I have with me Gao Motsemme. She is a freedom illuminator embodiment queen, and otherwise a human MRI and psychic surgeon, which she's going to get into. She has some stories that are going to blow your mind and how she got through them to a point where she is such a successful coach and entrepreneur today. So, how are you today?
I'm blessed and grateful and thankful to be here. Thanks for
Oh,
having me.
the honor and the privilege is all mine. But first, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, the complement of your family, where you grew up, and what was it like to be How as a kid?
That's a great question. And before I can dive into that, I'm just going to extend my greetings to your audience. So, dumelang, lokai. And that is my greetings in my native language. I come from Botswana in Southern Africa, and I've been residing in Germany now for 10 plus years. And dumelang, it means in direct translation, I would just say agree. So as we're engaging here, meeting for the first time, having this conversation for the first time, and we are being called here by the amazing bread at life-changing challenges. My question is, what are you agreeing to? What pulled you to be here? What called you to press that button and listen to this? And even when you hear the words life-changing challenges, what does that tell you? What are the challenges that you may be dealing with, and what is it that you are learning from them, you know? And lokai means, where are you? Is there something that you are refusing? Because the truth of it is, when you refuse the problem, you refuse the solution. So I invite you, since we are meeting for the first time, to connect to your body. Let go of what you know. I know there have been amazing experts here. You've heard a lot, you know a lot, but the truth of it, we do not transform our lives by the information. The magic is in being and diving into the wisdom. And for now, may we listen to the body. Let us allow the body to tell us something and not us telling the body what to feel. That is, we're going to pay attention to the sensation. Maybe you hear something, emotions are coming through, and you're just going to acknowledge everything without even judging anything. So we're going to post it for all of our aspects of ourselves and invite them to be here. And I love the question that you asked me. How was it to be me as a child? And that means our children are also allowed here, since I'm delving into me as that inner child.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. No one has ever done that. No one has ever been selfless enough to let us into the agreement and the fascination and the language of our bodies and our minds to get us ready to listen to you tell us about your childhood. So
Thank
thank you for
you.
that.
My pleasure. Yeah, so growing up, how? I placed that way. I was just accepted as a queen and everybody loved me and all that. That was like my childhood. We always wish for that. But I would say I knew at the core of my being who I was since I was a child. I came through unapologetic, but coming from a very traditional family where this is how you have to be as a girl, this is how you have to dress up, this is how you have to talk. That part of me was not accepted. And the words that my mom used to say a lot, it became something that I had so many times that every time I had to question who I was you are not like any of my children. So that was like the dance between me and my mom. We fought to say, I can be me. No, you have to be like the rest of my children. Even the way I dressed up was questioned, the way I showed up was questioned. So being a rebellious child, because I feel I was rebelling against the norm, right? I was rebelling, wanting to be myself despite what is happening. I still remember one thing that actually just was outstanding was one moment when she said something and I stopped in my rebelling attitude and I said, I can't be like any of your children because I am how and I can only be me because my name is how. So I was just saying that from that child rebelling attitude. And for the first time, she stopped and she looked at me and laughed. And it was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I don't know whether she said child bastard or whatever, but I trust that she said something in her heart, but kind of like feeling speechless at the same time. But I went there through my life, living my life, thinking that I've won. I speak for myself and all that. But what I didn't realize is that this, why can't you just be like the rest of my children, was somehow the deciding factor in every decision that I was making. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be accepted. So I would say that was the wound that somehow I created my life from, despite thinking that, yeah, my rebellion child won, but there was the part of me that wanted to be accepted.
Was that the way that she wanted you to be? Was that more familial, meaning that it was a tradition for your family, or was it societal?
I would say both. It was more like just cultural thing. This is, as a girl, mostly it's more like even how you have to dress. You have to wear skirts, dresses. As a child, even when you're spoken to, you don't have to speak. Things like that. And it doesn't mean it's just like, and it's quite interesting because I would say globally we experience this thing where the child is not seen, is not heard, right? Or is seen but not heard. So it was like one of those things. But a part of me, if I know what somebody say what I'm saying, I would just be like, yeah, and saying what I'm saying, which was my truth, despite them not willing to embrace that. And I challenged a lot of stuff. I still remember even when my dad died when I was 14, and I was crying, and my mom's sister was like, "Oh, don't cry." I mean, that was a way of comforting me. Don't cry. Your father was sick for some time. So my 14-year-old aspect looked at her and said, "So what? If he was sick for some time, now I can't cry." So it's gonna like, why can't you just allow me to feel the pain that I'm feeling? And I still remember, even because the tradition back home, when somebody dies, clothes and everything is kept for at least a year, and then afterwards it's distributed. So I still remember when the things were distributed, we had to cut our hair when somebody dies. And then when after this year, when things are distributed, we cut our hair again. Like that's the tradition. So I cut my hair the first time. And after a year, I was like, I'm not cutting my hair. So the elders challenged me. You were crying that your father died, and now you are not willing to honor him. And I was like, what surprises me is you claim to be Christians, but there is something I think in the Bible about not cutting your hair for the dead or something like I don't remember, but I was just like challenging that, and I'm like, it doesn't mean that if I choose not to cut my hair, I'm not grieving, but I choose not to do it because I don't even see the reason of doing it. So my question, even in that rebellious thing, was like, is he gonna wake up when I cut my hair? But for me, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
I grew up in the Jewish religion, and when someone dies, you rip a piece of your garment, right?
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
after a year, you sew it back up. And I'm like,
Oh,
well, what does that represent? And basically, it's saying that, you're willing to walk around with this ripped garment in honor of the dead, that person.
yeah.
So why not, when I sew it back up, do they not come back to life? That doesn't make sense to me at all. But again, tradition, right? So, and it's usually it's that happens with the, oh, this makes it even better. Now, in order to keep with that tradition, they give you like this pin with black, it's like a black ribbon. So it's like it's a circle, and then it's got
Uh-huh.
it's got one piece that comes down,
Uh-huh.
and it's serrated so that when you're ready to, you rip it. So you just put it on the pin and you just rip it. And that's supposed to symbolize it. I'm like, why? What does that actually do? Now it's a pin. And now it's not even your, like, I can almost see it when it's your piece of clothing.
Yeah.
I could almost see that. And even then I was questioning it. But now they just give you a little pin. You just do this. And then when you're done, you throw a pin out. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, actually, with that, we also had like for men, they would put mostly it was blue or I think black or green. It tends to depend on whether the church that you're going to, the color that church was wearing. And for women, it was mostly there was like something that we had to put on your neck. Like you wear that, it's kind of like wool tied together and all that, and you put it on your neck.
Mm. Okay. I mean, and there's traditions for everything and wherever it came from. So, how did the dynamic of your family? So wait, let's step back. How many do you have brothers and sisters?
I do.
How many?
I would say I'm the sixth child, and then we have the younger brother who is 7. Yeah.
There was 7 children? Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Very big family. Yeah.
How did the dynamic of your family change after your father passed?
Whew, it was challenging already, even when he was present. But then when he passed, especially for me, I was daddy's girl. And no matter what, as much as I had, I would say with my mom, it was always that dense, actually, because some of my siblings they were not biologically my fathers. So with my mom, she had this thing of I'm being present for my children who do not have a father. Like that was like her way of I'm gonna show up fully so you go to your father. That was like the way of relating or even knowing that my father is the one who's gonna there for me 100%. So when my father died, it was kind of like I lost my world. Like all of a sudden, I didn't know who to turn to, like who I can trust that when I come and say I need this, he's gonna do everything in his power to get me that. So it changed everything totally for me. I would say there was this anger that came through. I felt like I'm not supported, so it was huge. I felt more alone on the other hand, you know,
Mm.
despite having a big family. And this is the thing
Yeah.
too. The times we can be in a big family, we can have a lot of people around us, but still feel lonely.
That's super interesting, and that answered my question completely. So, 14, you were either starting, I don't know what is it called in Botswana? Is it high school?
In Botswana, I completed my primary school. I was going to a junior school. A junior school is kind of like something in the middle, and then there comes the high school. Yeah.
So, what were you like in high school? Were you the popular girl? Were you the jock? Were you the loner, or something completely different?
I don't even know what to call it, but it was like one of those girls. It's kind of like I was still different in the sense of this started at junior school where even the way I dress up, I would say every time I challenged the normal scenario. I still remember even when I was at junior school, I would say when I was like a year or two after my father died, the way I dressed up when I showed up, especially the way, because we were wearing uniform at school. So there were times when there would be a day where you don't wear uniform, you just come with the clothes. So I started dressing up differently. At times I'll come with high shoes, like stilettos and all that, and then I'll buy something, even though it was cheap, but it was kind of like, yeah, many people were looking like, yeah, asking questions, all that. So I always had that in me. I don't know, it's something that I love to challenge situations wherever I was. So I was that girl. I was that girl.
How did you do as far as grades go? Were you a good student?
I was a good student. I was a very good student. And then an okay student, not in the, like, I had a problem, especially in the last year of my junior school. But I still did well because some of my books were stolen. So after my books were stolen, especially in science, I don't know, science and one subject, like there's a big book where you write notes for 3 years and someone stole it. So at that moment, I was like, I don't have the energy to start from the beginning writing notes for my exam. So I didn't do well in my science. But otherwise, I performed well. I would say, remembering even in high school, towards the end, I had to sit down and ask myself, if you don't do well, what's going to happen? I still remember having a conversation with my friends, like, after school, we have to stay behind and study. And they told me that, oh, how I trust that you can do that. And they never bought into whatever ideas that I had. So I had to sit by myself and do the work by myself. I had that consciousness that if I don't do anything for myself, mm, whatever that they predicted about me would be right. Because, like I said, I was born me and knowing who I was. So every time when I showed up, I would still hear parents or elders just saying, is she really gonna finish school this one? Yeah, so like I was like from since I was like 7, 8 and all that, that was the talk around. So at the back of my mind, despite me being me, I just knew that if I do what they said, I'll prove them right. So I would say that I'll prove you wrong somehow was one of my big motivators.
The rebel. They said, "Oh, you're not going to do well," and you said, "Shh, watch me, watch me."
Exactly. I'll prove you wrong. Let's see.
Were you involved in any extracurriculars, like
I was
sports or? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I was doing even at the junior school. This is one thing that actually people felt bad because I was born when my father was 60 years old.
Ah.
So yeah, my mom was 40, my father was 60. So there was this thing. I don't even know. I'm just remembering this. The first time I'm remembering this in an interview.
Yeah.
But my father being at the age that he was, there was this thing that even when, let me say, he buys me something, I want something, and then he gives me money for it, I would get, it's not a compliment, but more like criticism. I remember my mother's sister, my mother's older sister saying, is it because he gave birth to children in his old age? So he's just spending his money. Instead of saying your clothes are nice, I'll then get a critic about my father being old. So I would say that's the environment that I grew up in. So as a child as well, it's kind of like I was doing a lot of things. I was in netball, in traditional bands, in 4B. I was doing a lot of things in scout. I was just like all over trying everything.
Oh, I mean, that's just pure curiosity. That's what you're supposed to be as a teenager, curious
Yeah.
about everything. Oh, well, that's great. A little bit of everything, just not him. Did you end up going to university?
I went to college.
Oh, is there? Okay, so, all right, here in the States, the difference between university and college is that college doesn't have anything after 4-year degree, right? Like
Mhm.
like college would be like you get your bachelor's degree, but that college doesn't offer a master's degree. University basically states that not only do they have the undergrad degrees, but it also has graduate degrees. Is that the same definition in Botswana?
There, what was different was actually I didn't even know about the existence because like I said, I'm just coming from a very traditional family. So anything about the cities and what happens, I didn't know. So all I knew about was the university and then the agricultural university and that other normal one where like everything is there. So I applied to the normal university and I was not accepted. And then I visited one of my uncles who was living close to the city. That's when I learned that, oh, there is another college where it was more specific. It was called Accountancy College and it was offering accounting, strictly accounting, or IT. So there was like more specific focus on either IT or accounting. So that's where I was taken. On the other hand, I did a bit of accounting when I was in high school. So it was more easier to get a place there. So that's where I went. I would say the difference was just like it was sort of a new thing by then at the same time. It was not well known. So that is the
Okay.
difference. Yeah.
So here you have prereqs. You'd have to take a science and a humanities and a social sciences and a thing on top of your main classes. Did you just specifically take accounting classes?
In Botswana Accountancy College, it was like strictly accounting, and then all the humanities and everything that was in the university. And then there was like strictly accounting. And when I look at like where I started, the Association of Accounting Technology, it's coming from the UK.
Okay.
Because yeah, we're colonized by
Right.
British, so it was like coming from there, and then from there, after you finish your AAT, then you do either ACCA or CIMA. It was like basically accounting focused. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So here, that's a vocational school. Like so we have like ITT Tech, and we've got different places where you can learn. You learn vocations, and that's all you learn. You go in, you learn the vocation, and you're out. And they'll give you a certificate, or they'll give you like that. You can always go to a college and take your prerequisites, what they call it, and that would
Mhm.
be. And all of a sudden, you'd get your associate's degree. But yeah, we have that as well here. We just call them, it's just a different vocabulary. It's vocational school here, or a tech college, as they might call it
Because
that.
there, with the Botswana Accountancy College, what is different? And if they want to dive deeper, they can go to Botswana Accountancy College and do the ACCA or SEMA, like another level of like yeah.
Okay. Is that what you did after college?
Yeah, I did SEMA.
Right. As far as a job placement, when you got out of school, is that what you went ahead and did? Did you did some accounting? You worked with a firm? Did you work with a company? First job?
When I finished my studies.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I got a job actually because the advantage with this is that at times through your studies, you also go for a, what do you call it? An attachment for
An
something like
internship? Yeah.
internship for something like 6 months or something like that. So I did that. And when I completed my internship, I got a call from another company that I applied for internship. They wanted someone to work there. So I kind of like continued while I was studying at the same time.
Oh, nice. Nice. So you have to make a little bit of you got to make a little money while you were in college.
Hmm.
Nice. Very nice. So what did you end up doing? Tell me about what happened after. Now you've got your studies, you've got a job. Tell me about you. What was happening in this time?
Yeah, I got my job and I would say moved around different companies a bit. And then I ended up in this other corporate company, the Diamond company. Like it's kind of like everybody wants to work there, which was great. And by then I had one child and I would say I got pregnant the first year when I was there in this company. After some time, the company was downsizing. So that was like the moment where I was like, okay, then what next? Which was questioning even the way like there was a lot of fear. Every 3 years there's the restructuring. And I was like, is this the life that I really want? I was not happy with that accounting job. And even just in the environment that I was in. I always say when some of these patterns that we are born into, they don't just begin and end at home. We'll experience them in relationship. The relationship that I was in, despite having 2 kids, there was just a lot that was not okay. A lot of, I would say, competition, a lot of somehow disrespect, cheating, and all that. It had its own toxicity. Competition in the sense of, I can see your facial.
Yeah.
Um, in the sense of like, at times you're not aware, but when it comes to partnership is more like we come together and the main goal is for us to elevate each other and help each other grow.
Right.
For me, that's how I see a relationship. But when I look at the relationship that I was in, it was more competitive in the sense of some of the advice that I was given while I was progressing, because there was a moment where I left the company that I worked for something like 3 years. And then I got a company that I worked for a few months and I was fired because somehow I missed work and the person who was helping me with the child didn't come. So I stayed home and I called in. And now when I came back, I was fired. I was like, okay. But I already went to an interview somewhere. It's kind of like I was always ahead. So when I was fired, I was like, okay, fine, I've got 2 weeks free. I'm gonna be with my son. And then I moved to this company. So at that moment, I was earning a little bit higher than my then boyfriend. So somehow I guess it's something that he was not happy with. And then I got a job after some time where I was earning a little bit higher than him. And somehow he was not happy and I was not happy at the job that I found at that moment. And in that, I worked there for a month, but I was just like, I made a fucked up mistake here. So I was just like, I need something. And thanks God, I was called to this corporate company and it was paying me double what I was earning in that particular company. So that means now my salary is like 4 times higher than my boyfriend. So he was like, don't go to that company. Don't go. And it's not like, it's kind of like your repetition and all that. You're moving from one company to the other. I'm like, this is once in a lifetime opportunity. And he was kind of like sick in a way. He even left his job without even serving notice and moved out of the country, moved to South Africa. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the times that somehow it's kind of like, I gotta get something that is at least higher or at least at par with you. So it was not, I would say it was not really that supportive and all that. It
Sure.
was more competitive, you know.
Oh, so yeah, my question is, okay, so let's talk about society where you were at this point. As far as uh, the men that you were dating that were more competitive, or was it just one man? Was it just one guy, or there was a couple of guys that were feeling this competition with you?
Uh, That's a good question, but I would say this is like one relationship that was more longer and like where we even at some point got to stay together where I was like more aware of this pattern. Otherwise, other times I didn't care. I was just like in my not caring attitude and doing what I'm doing.
Okay, so back to my question as far as society goes, in the environment that you were in, was it embarrassing for a man to have a wife, girlfriend, whatever, that was making more money than him?
Yeah, looking at the man's ego and the whole belief that man is a provider, I would say, yeah, I still remember in one company that I was working for, there was one lady who was a boss, and somehow he was married to somebody who was not a boss somewhere. And still people would talk about that relationship, and I'll be like, but what matters is like the whatever that they have working on, they're happy and they love each other. That's what matters. But I would say culturally, societally, yeah. So that should tell you a lot that indeed there is this thing of like proper definition of rules and then who has to have more and all that.
That was a roundabout way of what I was trying to get you to say. So you did
Yeah.
exactly what I was asking for.
Crazy in the sense of
Yes.
even when it comes to when I'm saying rules, even when it comes to like family. I mean, we are in 2024, but I still know quite a lot of men who believe that, oh, I can't do that. You know, let's just say even when maybe your in-laws visit and let's assume you and me are married and they come and they see you either changing a child's nappy or cooking, it's kind of like, what the heck happened with my child? What did this woman do to my child? Like it will be that kind of they're like, oh shit, something has happened. She did something to him, or he's not a man enough. Sometimes people measure masculinity based on this, I would say, the toxic or wounded masculine of I can't do that. I still remember my siblings were older when I was growing up. So when my father was there and my mother, because my parents were they were more
Tradition.
they were never around. So they were more in the farm, or my father was at the cattle post. So I was living with my older sisters because their children were also more my age, right? So when my father was around, even if I wanted to be with him, but I couldn't be with him because he was not able to take care of me as a child. You understand? So that means I would still be by my sister and just go visit him or just want to bring food or something like that. So it's, yeah, it's bad.
I see that. Yeah. So yeah, out here it's not. We have a bad saying. It's not the greatest saying in the world, but it works. We have a saying. It's called "Happy Wife, Happy Life." So it's basically saying, hey, if your wife stays happy, you'll be happy too. So if she asks you to change some diapers, you better change some diapers. If she says, can you make us a sandwich? You make her a sandwich. You know what I mean? But you have the ability as a husband to ask the same thing, you know?
Yeah. No,
So,
but
and if you love your wife, I mean, it's the same way, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, in the age that I was born, it's crazy that a wife will be busy doing whatever that they're doing, and a man will, because it was the time of the newspapers. And those are the things that for me as a child, I was just looking at this and I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want this. So I was not in alignment with that. I always had that opinion that I had even as a child. Like, if it means having a family or having kids, no, thank you.
Oh, yeah. No, no, no. I get that. So I get that you were born with this authenticity, with your like, no,
Right.
I'm me and this is what you get. I am not going to cater to what the societal role says I'm supposed to do. And the fact that you're able to continue to do that is amazing, especially in what I would say was kind of a very traditional environment. Is that about right? Is that where I'm going?
Yeah, it's very traditional. And actually, what is coming to my mind, even when you say that, I mean, when I look at it, like in terms of like that tradition, yes, I grew up in that setting. And I look at it as at the same time from the perception of the spirituality. which is also a part of me that also had a problem with the spirituality part, where I felt like it's still a mess, where the spirituality is more like a combination of this religious, which, like, where I come from, it was more Christianity beliefs and all that, you know, and and then a combination of the tradition. It all becomes or oppressive. That's how I felt it for me, even as a child. And I was asking questions, and I was just told, "You'll never be with anyone. You'll never be," all those things. But I was just having like normal questions, and for me, like at the core of my being, my soul was not really resting with all the things. Even when I went to church, there was a certain place. Some churches there was a certain place for men, and at some church, women will sit on the floor, men will sit on the chairs. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So my question was, I still remember having a conversation with another man and I say, what if God sent me to be there and say something to the people? What if I'm sent here for something? And at that time, what they just said is like, oh, men are the ones who are only given that position to either lead or be pastors or priests or whatever in the church. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that, because something is telling me that there is something that I'm here to do. So if, as a woman, because I don't have whatever the men, basically I don't have the men genitals, so I can't say that. I feel like it's still in taking something from me. So along the way, church was not interesting for me either, which was one of the things that my mom used to say, like, oh, I don't know what happened, because you used to go to church, you used to pray a lot, but all of a sudden it was not in alignment with me.
Mm. That makes a perfect sense, especially because Catholic religion and Christian religion, it's very strict on how to act, what you cannot do. It's super strict. All right, so let's move on a little bit. I understand through some of the research that I've done and things that you put out that you actually ended up moving. You ended up in 2 different countries on 2 different continents with different relationships. Can you tell us how that happened and what happened? Let's start with the first one and how you ended up moving from Botswana into a different country.
Yeah. I was working for this amazing corporate company where I was earning lots of money. One of the things, being a prideful, independent woman that I was, I did everything by myself. When the father of my children was not willing to take part, I was like, okay, I can do this and I don't give an F. And I continue doing that. So there comes a time when the company is now downsizing and I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? Because that company was the highest paying company in the country. So I had to question myself. I just bought a house at that time. And besides that, my job or my profession was a big part of my identity. We live in a world where we are told what to do and all that before we find out who we are. I took pride in the company that I was working for. I took pride in the profession that I had. So when that was happening, it kind of like, yeah, it rocked my foundation, and but a part of me was excited even when I was going through that when the company was downsizing, I actually chose to take a package. And a part of me was like, I'm going to move to the UK. I didn't know how I was going to do it with two children, but it's something that I've always desired. I remember when I was sitting with either my friends or talking, I'll be telling them this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to be working. This is like, I'll just tell them all the stories about me abroad. So when this happened, I was like, okay, time for me to relocate. But I didn't know how the heck I'm going to do that. And after I took the package, I was back home, and by then, the things that I used to do during festive season, I didn't have any interest. I felt like there is something that is emerging within me. My younger brother had an accident and he died, and I was just crying. And when he came from the kettle post, I was like, oh my God, I'm glad you made it. Because I had this dream and it was real. I was talking about the plans that you had for yourself. And he just said, oh, I'm going to live for a long time. How? Don't worry. Which I love the response. But 2 weeks later, he had an accident, and thanks God, he didn't die, but it was a very bad one. And I had to now sponsor his recovery and all that. But I remember seeing him at the hospital afterwards. I knelt and I said, God, please save my younger brother. And I'm willing to do what I came here to do. So I believe that that was the part when I said yes to this purpose that I didn't even know what it was, but I was saying yes to what I've always known in my heart. that there is something that I'm here to do. So after that, I lost my mom, and shortly after, my then ex-boyfriend took me to court because I met my now ex-husband when my mom was still alive. I'll tell her about him, even though they never met because he was here in Germany and I was there in Botswana. And he always said, Mama used to say, this one is just crazy. She's there in the room, she's there, she's talking to her man. And it's kind of like, I don't know what to say in English, but in Setswana, he would say, "Ubu le thokolo," is like, more like she's talking to either an alien or a ghost or something like that. Because she was not familiar with this whole Zoom thing and all this kind of like, what kind of man is this? She's talking like this one. This one is crazy because them always, that's how like they refer to me like the crazy one. I always did things that were not normal. But then, yeah, then she passed and my ex-boyfriend went, I believe someone, because they will always have someone close who knows what they know and they'll be the first to leak the information outside. They say that the water from the ocean cannot sink the ship unless there is something in the ship that they are going. Yes. So somehow somebody told him something, and before I knew it, and that was like the first time when I moved, I was actually in Munich. I just came to see how it is in Germany. And then I was called by my sister, like, hey, that paper's here. Your ex-boyfriend filed and he wants the kids and stuff like that. So yeah, but even then, my head was high. I was like, okay, there is evidence, everything is there. I took care of the kids by myself, and he was not present. Because along the way, some things happen for a reason, despite being a prideful, independent woman that I was. I remember a friend of mine saying how you need to report this guy for maintenance. I know that you don't need the money, but at the end of the day, you don't have to be doing this by yourself. And at times, as women, we do that just because you can doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself. And I somehow listened and I went and I filed for that. And I still remember, the toxic relationship when I was going to file, this guy came back and he was like, oh, I'm going to marry you. I don't know why you have to do this and all that. And I'm like, okay, fine. If at all we ever get married, then we'll cancel this thing. But I'm filing and I'm sticking by this. And he was ordered to pay, which was like 1,000 pula per child by court, but he still didn't. So I was holding into this thing as evidence that he was even ordered by court to support his children and he didn't. And here's the evidence. So when I went back home, I hired a lawyer. They hired like one of the best lawyers in the country. So I had to find someone who I somehow had hopes or trust that he can be able to represent me against those best lawyers and all that. But when I came out of court, the person who walked in, I didn't know what happened. I couldn't believe what happened, but it is what it was. It's kind of like I was there, but I was not even listened to. I was not heard. It's kind of like I was the wrong person in all ways. I don't even know what happened. I couldn't even hear what my lawyer was trying to say even at that moment. And I went and looked for another lawyer who also made promises. And then at the end, she was like, no, let's just try to mediate. So I don't know if it was because they were afraid of this guy, this big guy who was representing my ex-boyfriend by then. But they said, no, we can just mediate. There's no need for you to go to court and stuff like that. We did what we could, but nothing was coming out of it. We went to the third lawyer. And still, nothing, I would say nothing positive was coming out of it. I still remember that at the time when I was called by social workers and they said, you need to come here and meet the boyfriend and his girlfriend. So I was like, so I should come alone and have a conversation with my ex-boyfriend and his girlfriend. And let me tell you whose girlfriend. That was like the woman who was married to his to his brother. So by then, I don't know whether it was my judgmental aspect or whatever. I was just like, I just wanted to puke at the whole thing. I was just like, this is just BS. And I still remember telling this woman that I'm not coming to that meeting. He was living with his girlfriend, but still the court found, I mean, it was a whole mess that it's more than 10 years ago. Even up to now, I can't tell you a story that makes sense. Even then, people still believe that how you just making this up. It doesn't make sense. First thing, you're not married with this guy. He doesn't have that much rights over your children. Second thing, he was not even present. Third thing, he doesn't even have a place of his own. He's living with his sister-in-law. What are you saying? For me, morally, it was not okay. And the social workers, when the social worker told me that you are naive, this is the woman who's going to be with your children. And I told her that I'm not attending. If it means losing the custody, then so be it. And the next thing I get a call from my lawyer. I heard that you gave the father of your children the custody. And I'm like, I didn't do that, but this is my argument. And the funny enough, and when you hear about corruption, the social worker has nothing to do with. She is representing the children. She is the government's representative, but more representing the children. So now tell me, how does it happen that when I'm telling her, challenging her decision to say, I'm willing to meet with the father of the children, but I don't want their girlfriend, sister-in-law to be there? And then how come all of a sudden his lawyers are calling my lawyer and say, "Oh, there's no case." She said she is giving. How does that happen? If at all there's no judicial injustice. Those are the things. But at the end, the conversation was had. My lawyer came to sort of like be the supportive person in there so that there is more, yeah, kind of like neutral, whatever. But on the other hand, it didn't bring anything because I still lost my case by all means. And I appealed, went to high court and all that, and I lost it. But at the end, with just the pain of everything, even when I go to my children's activities, my ex-boyfriend will come with his girlfriend, sister-in-law's children and everybody, and I'll be there by myself alone. It was difficult. So there was a moment when I said, fuck it. I can sit here and be tortured every time with this whole situation, or I can choose to live my life. And I chose to relocate without the children because I believe that was the agenda, because he knew that my children meant a lot to me. And without me relocating with them, I won't. So I ended up relocating to Germany by myself and I fought the case while I was here.
Wow. So, yeah, talk about injustice. The guy wasn't present in their life. He was asked to pay what we call child support, didn't pay that. And then all of a sudden, because he found out that you were looking to relocate somewhere else with somebody else, he
Mm-hmm.
decided to sue you for custody. You had all this evidence saying that, no, this guy wants nothing to do. All he wants to do is hurt me. That's what he wants
Yeah.
to do. But you're gonna let him go off with my children?
Yeah.
Wow, and that even went up to appellate court. We went to appeals, and it still didn't come back to that. Wow, yeah, we think our we
And the judge was a woman. This is like one of those things where I was sitting in that court looking at this woman. The offices that I've been through and all that, like some people that I knew who at times would be like, "Oh, I know some people in this offices. I'll just ask what is happening." And the responses that I got was, "Oh, how when you go to offices, you need to humble yourself. You need to like don't speak English, only speak Setswana." And like it was all these stupid small things that for me did not make any sense. If I'm walking in and I'm confident and I believe this does not make any sense, I have to question that. But every time it was kind of like, "Oh, don't speak English. Try to speak Setswana. Humble yourself." I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? What is humble yourself? If the facts are there looking at us, is it about me or is it about the children? And it's like one of those things where even like I said, the judge, it was kind of like we just gotta put you in your place. It's kind of like what I experienced in my relationships. So it's kind of like, who the hell do you think you are? And then I'm going to offices and I'm still receiving this. Who the hell do you think you are? This kind of thing where even the word humble, there was a moment where I hated that word because even now I can't say I really know. I don't know what it means because people believe that I don't know what being humble is. I'm being who I am. I'm speaking the truth about what is here. It's not even about right or wrong. It's kind of like, this is the situation here. And so it's kind of like you have to be begging, you have to be, or maybe I have to be on my knees and be crying and all that. I don't know. I don't know. I just fail to understand. And this is someone not only because of all that in all my relationship, I was very good at attracting people who had a background with alcohol as well. So one of the reasons why, even when he said that I didn't allow him to be with the children, yes, I refused, especially when he came and wanted to take the children when he was drunk. I wouldn't allow that. And I believe everyone in their right mind wouldn't let someone to go with their children when they're drunk and even all the insults and all that.
Right.
But still, no one was willing to hear me out.
He's an alcoholic. He's a deadbeat. He's homeless because he's living with his sister-in-law. What the heck's going on there? Which is not necessarily the most moral thing in the world.
Really?
Yet, yeah, yet you provided a stable household. You were making a good amount of money, enough to take care of them with or without his maintenance payment. And you provided them with their education and everything else. What the heck? Who could not see this? This is like straight out. It's, oh my God. So the social worker, you said, who's supposed to be the representative for the child, were they speaking out on, do they have a choose a side? Were they giving an influence member where they'd say, hey, well, I think the children belong with How? They don't belong with this guy. They belong with How?
But it was like I can't even say what I have to say. It was more like I just have to accept that whatever the court says. Because like I said, when we were in the process of that, the woman said, "You will be naive if you think that these children are not going to be mothered by this woman because they're going to be staying by her house. So you just have to deal with it." Yeah. So in that situation, they were supportive of my ex and his girlfriend because it doesn't matter even what they said because the situation is the situation as it is. I still remember one thing that they love to put out was like, "Oh, we don't have an issue with her. We just want to be civil and we want us to work together because even if she can move to abroad, our children are cousins and all that." And for me, it was kind of like, this is all fucked up. What are you talking about? Even what you mean by being civil, you know?
You're taking my children away. That's personal.
No, they were being civil. So I guess the whole being civil thing, and I'm just like, I want to give you a middle finger right now. Don't tell me shit civil nonsense here because there's no, and just rewinding a little bit when as a woman, the intuition always tells you, it always guides you. I always knew there was something, especially after my second child was born. So there were some things that were just happening that made me question a lot of stuff. So for me to even find out, it was like just one morning, I'm waking up, I'm going to work, and I switch on my computer at work, and I'm here on my computer, and then something just comes to mind. Check his email. Okay. And I open into Yahoo and I type the whatever email address, and I'm like, I don't know his password. And I'm trying the first password, and then there I am in the emails. And I'm going through the emails. Okay, cool. And I read a lot of his girlfriends and stuff like that, even some of his brother's girlfriend, like whatever that is going on is kind of messy. So I go through that and I skip this woman's emails and I just go through that, but I'm pissed off at the same time. And I go home. And when I get home, the first memory that like I'm having a conversation with something that I don't even know how to explain. But why did you not read those emails? Because I skipped the emails of the sister-in-law. And I'm like, okay, I didn't have any Wi-Fi at home. So I go there tomorrow, I check, and I find that even the time when I was at the hospital, there was a relationship going on all this time. So that's how I got to find out. And I remember after I found out about this, and I asked him, I was like, oh, you are just itchy. And he came that weekend and he was like, if you dare tarnish my name, I'll take you to court, I'll sue you. And he even brought this girlfriend, opened the car and said, come and slap her and all that. Like it was just a lot of shit that is happening. And then years later, here we are now in court fighting for the children. And here's the thing, when I say rewind, even the time when I found out, I remember I called his father and I said, this is what is going on. And he came and said, by the look of things, it seems like the mother always knew. And he said to me, oh, you need to be careful because my ex-wife said she's going to do everything in her power to take your children away from you. And I wonder what kind of a mother she is because the time when we were divorcing, I had every right, every reason, every evidence for me to take her children away from her. But I couldn't because I knew that would kill her. So there I was years later. experiencing that.
That's incredible because let me tell you something. If I were in your position, oh yeah, dude, it would be on. So you are a much better person than I am because you start taking something away from me. Nope, nope, everything's off the table. So kudos that you had that ability to say, you know what, even though I am going through this, even though my children are being taken away, I know that I have the ability to have the evidence to show her what I was feeling. You said, nope. She says, not strong enough. And if I do that, I can survive what she's doing to me, but she will never survive if I turn the tables on her. And that is a mark of a truly good person. So kudos. And yeah, you're a much better person than even me.
No, but I'm not.
Well,
Uh,
you are, if you had the ability, and that might have actually gotten your children back, and you didn't do it because of what you knew would do to her. I think that makes you a pretty damn good person.
if I had a way, like we always say that I'll kill for my children, that's where I was raging at that level. And at times when we think we're dealing with an enemy, it's kind of like I have to kill this person before they kill me. Then my thoughts were there, my heart was there. But the question is, how the fuck am I going to deal with this? I didn't know how, So even the moving away doesn't mean that there was nothing that was waiting within me. And that's when along the way, when I would say somehow my higher self was just making herself or her presence known. And it was quite interesting when she said, "Oh, the way you want to deal with it's not the right way. This is not what you came here for." And I was just laughing by myself, like, "Oh shit, don't tell me that." You know that I just wanted these people dead. So it's quite interesting when you face yourself and it's kind of like, yeah, I'm that bad, But that's not what you came here for, not in this lifetime. That's not your path.
There's thoughts and there's actions. I think we have to allow ourselves to have the dark thoughts so we can realize that we don't need to act and we shouldn't act based on our personal values. But you're going to have the dark thoughts, and I think you have to have them in order to battle that darkness, right? But let's move on. You moved to Germany and you don't have your children. What happened at that point? You found a job? Were you continuing to fight? How did that work out?
Yeah, I found a job and being here, that means it was me and yeah, my then husband, and we're traveling and all that, but still a part of me, wherever that I went, I can't be happy if I don't know what is happening with my children. And at the same time, when I speak to them and they're happy, or I see pictures somewhere they're happy, I felt betrayed by my children. I was still fighting the case. And I still remember one day when I came from work, by then my husband was saving and I was alone. I just had this nudge to start writing. And I sat down. First thing I had a shower and I sat down by the dining room and I started writing. And the words that came through was, who are you without your mother, your father, your religion, your house, your career, your husband, your wife, like everything that we've often attached to who we being. And I was just like, this is good. But at the same time, I would say there was a part of my ego that was not like thinking or connecting to that message. When it said, who are you without your children? That caught my attention. And I still remember I threw away the pen and I said, so this message is for me. So I started questioning, but who am I don't know who I was. I just cried, because I was so wrapped up into the whole thing of I have to fight for my children. I was here even not being freely myself because I had shame, as a woman. First thing, even where I come from, there were times when a woman is married and she cannot have children. She is either divorced or the husband can have another woman. This is like the tradition that I come from. And now here I am, I gave birth to these two children, but I can't even be with them. So a part of me felt like I was ashamed of who I was. Even at times when I shared the story, but when someone say, oh, I don't know if I'll be alive if I was you. So I kind of like, maybe I'm not loving enough. the fact that I'm still alive, you know? So I questioned who I was. So when that message came through, it was like exposing another layer of the truth that is not taught in the society. Who are you without your mother, your father, your religion, your car, your house, your husband, your wife, your children? So I cried, but I was also curious of who the heck I was, you know. So while I was going through that finding who I was, I still remember the time when I was in my body and I had a moment where I was told it's time for you to do what you came here to do. So it's okay, what the hell is that? You know, to help people with your gift. So at that moment, it's kind of like I felt my soul leave my body and I connected with everyone on the planet. And I could feel the pain of suffering on the planet, the cries and everything. And while I was connecting with that, I also connected with myself before I was born. And there was this aspect that was crying, I don't want to be born on this planet. I really didn't want to be here, you know. So, and then I came back into my body. And the question was, do you still want to continue being here? So I knew there is pain in the planet. This is why I didn't want to be here. There are people who are crying because of whatever that they're going through. But I'm gifted to illuminate that, but I'm sitting there. So I'd say that was also one of the moments that was highlighting my journey. And I said, but what am I going to say to people when I show up? Teach them a new way of being. That was the response that I got. So, as if that's not enough, I still remember one day I was at work and I received a call. This was like the first time that this guy called me while I was here. And I was like, what does he want? And then I answered and he said, you may need to sit down for this one. I sat down and he said, Fiona had an accident. She was bitten by Rottweilers and some muscles or veins that have been teared by this dogs. So I don't know if she'll ever walk.
This is one of your children.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That moment, my gratitude all these years was I'm glad that my children are fine. I've never been called because one of them is sick or anything. And that moment, it was kind of like one thing that I held into is gone. And I felt every fighting power in me, every I am strong dissolve. And I hated to be strong in that moment. But at the same time, a part of me that said, I'm tired of being strong. It's kind of like I allowed myself to be, I surrendered, I let go of the mask of strong and allowed myself to feel. That's why I'm a big fan of the power of vulnerability and authenticity. And I went back home, but at the same time, I had this hope that something is going to happen because now there is proof, you know, because this accident happened when they were supposed to be at school, but because the father was drunk on that Sunday, the following day they didn't go to school and then the accident happened. So there is evidence, you know. So when I went and did what I did, the woman who was a social worker at the hospital took my files and she said, this is a simple case. Let me see what I can do. She brought back the file and said, if you were meant to get help, you would have gotten the help. But what you're dealing with is a spiritual thing. And she handed me back the files. You are fighting a spiritual battle.
You are fighting a special battle.
It's not something physical. It's something that may need me to deal with it energetically, spiritually, whatever. And funny enough, even one of the offices that I went through, when you look at it, when something like are not meant to happen the way you desire, I went into this other office that was like helping with cases like this. And when I went there, the office that I was assigned to, when I opened that door to get the help, the person who was on the other side of that table was my ex-cousin. And I said, yeah, conflict of interest, you can't help me. But on the other hand, it's a losing battle because not long after I received a call from him saying that I heard that you're in this offices, that all the stories. But after all, I ended up coming back home and then I was still trying to find a way, how can I get help with this? But the voice that came through was, you're not going to win. The odds are against you. So what am I supposed to do? Do the inner work. You need to forgive everyone involved in this case. And I just laughed like a mad woman. I said, forgiveness. What the fuck are you talking about? Forgiveness. Do you want your children back? And I said, I do. Are you willing to do the work? And I said, I don't know how to forgive. I don't know. Are you willing to? If that's the only thing that I have to do, then I'm willing to. And I asked, what am I going to do? Show up every day, sit and be open to connect. And I asked again, like, how would I know if that forgiveness is complete? That heart will open and you'll have your children back. And I trust with this work that I was doing, I was getting downloads that were helping to dissolve whatever pain and resistance and resentment that I had, because I was somehow detached from the outcome. And I was not even doing the forgiveness from the mentalization where at times we just rush to say, oh, I've forgiven, yet someone is showing up with a lot of emotions and pain, So I was sitting with myself and being open. But the next thing that I know is I was sitting in my altar and this guy was going through his own dark times. But at that moment, what I connected with was my children need their father. So I just knew that whatever that has to happen, I just asked to be led so that he can be led to the light and choose to leave no matter what he's going through. And after that, it's kind of like I caught myself in that moment. I was just like, who the fuck am I? Because I didn't recognize the woman that I was, the woman who wanted this person dead and the woman who is now praying for his life. So this is the power of doing the inner work, because at the same time, when you look at life, there is a reason why at times we go through the fire that we go through. When you ask me, what does this whole journey mean to you? I would say this journey was happening for me. And it's like I had to collapse all that I thought I was, all that I bought into, so that the real me can emerge. This was bringing me to myself. Had I refused the lessons, the journey, I can't say I would have been the better parent to my children. I would still have parented from the limitation, the fear, the unworthiness, the anger, and everything that I had, the not being accepted, and everything just from childhood. That's where I would have come from. And through all that happened, now I get to connect with my inner child and see my inner child through my children's eyes. I get to connect with my parents and also understand that parenting is not, like they say in German, is not a baby's play. One of the messages that came through along the way was, you are angry because you believe that these children belong to you, but they don't belong to you. They belong to God. They are on their path. Are you willing to find your own path? Are you willing to live your own purpose? You understand? So through that, it's just like understanding that I don't own anyone, and I can be grateful for the 5 years, because my daughter was 5 years when we separated. My son was 7 years. I can be grateful for those years and embrace the time that we shared together. Even if it was like physical death, I was still gonna mourn, but still be grateful that they chose me and they connected with me and I got to experience how it feels like to be a mother. But on the other hand, who am I to refuse the path that I'm being called to walk?
Wow. Okay, so that phew, I am speechless. The idea that you were given instruction or a path stating that, hey, you know what? Your children are remaining with their father who's got all these strikes against him for a reason. It's God's path that they stay. You've done everything right. You have gone ahead and you fought for them. You've showed them that you're willing to fight for them. But for some reason, God has a different path for them and they need to follow it. And that means staying with their father. Meanwhile, you have your own path you need to follow. And you should not deviate from your path in order to detour them from theirs.
Yeah.
So that's really powerful. is that the starting of where you started to feel that, okay, what you went through can teach others?
Yeah, so it was at that moment when all the anger that I had somehow dissolved. And I'm here in this marriage where now I'm stepping up to say, this is who I am. There's a path that I'm being called to. And this loving husband of mine said, that's a fantasy. There's no God that exists. You have to just get out of your high horse or whatever nonsense and come back to the real life here. Or even when I spoke about that I've forgiven my ex and all that, he was very angry about the whole thing. What do you mean you've forgiven them? You've forgiven him? And now it's quite interesting because at first, like, we're together and focus on this problem. And now when it's kind of like, now the time is here, our attention is on us. Now it's kind of like we're realizing this gap that is here. And this is also one of the things that the other one is doing the work, healing and all that, and the other one is not. Then somehow you outgrow each other. So when I was called to my path, even the time when I was just grateful for the way everything is just evolving, it's kind of like there was also that competition with God where it's kind of like, oh, we did what we did as well is not God and all that. So it's it's kind of like I didn't even know how to talk about in all this thing. So yeah, that's where I was, and while I was stepping into this path, and then I was pregnant with my little girl, which at that moment I was not even. I actually realized I was pregnant when I was coming back home after my daughter was bitten by dogs. And I was also angry with that, because I was in a marriage where there was still an alcohol issue, So as much as I was married, but I knew that I don't want to have children with the same person despite having different names, So yeah, then I found that I was pregnant. So my then ex-husband was angry that I was angry that I was pregnant, but on the other hand, yes, it's a conversation we had, and because he said I'm gonna change, but he was not changing. So it was clear that the child part is out of the way. But when I was angry and expressing where I'm coming from, he was just angry that I don't know what he made it mean, and we went through what we went through. And it's quite interesting because when I had my second child, at some point I was at the hospital and my ex-boyfriend was supposed to be with me, was not there. He went to his sister-in-law slash girlfriend. And here I was as well after I gave birth to my daughter in Germany. And the following, I didn't see my daughter even because it was a traumatic birth, so cesarean and all that. So I saw my daughter after like 24 hours. Then then the following day, my husband then didn't come to the hospital. So I still felt abandoned because here it's even worse. I don't have any mother, sister, whatever. Like the only person that I had was my husband, and here he was not present. So it's kind of like the repetition of the same crazy thing again, you know.
Okay. All right. I got my first question. Did your daughter recover 100% from the bikes, from the dog bites?
I mean, she can walk, she's fine, but on the other hand, she has to live like most part of the thigh is like gone. Like it was really bad. Like she's living with
Okay.
this whole.
So she was permanently affected by this.
Yeah.
And the daughter that you had with your husband in Germany, she's okay?
Yeah, she's okay.
Okay, good. Good. Those are the two things I was like, because the way you said traumatic, and I understand it was basically that they had to do cesarean.
I mean,
So,
traumatic in the sense of she also had some neurological something like when I look at it from the energetic side, the body was not firing up with the head. It's kind of like there was a disconnection somewhere. So even after she was born, and they say there were some cysts in the brain, and some cysts will never disappear, and some stuff like that. So I still stood my ground with what I believe to be true, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the body, like everything is energy, no matter what illness. So when I had all this, as much as I was going through my own thing as well, but I just held the truth that everything is gonna be corrected, as like it's gonna be healed. Even at that moment when I was holding that space for all these things to be fine, he still kept on saying, "Come back to the real world." But after the first year, when we did some scan and all that, this disappeared, and the neurological issues that she had was gone because the head was bigger than the face and all that. So there was just a lot of issues. But I would say whatever that it was meant to be, it's not what it was, So she's just a normal child.
And so are you still married to him?
No, no, we've been divorced now.
Okay. And just tell me how old your children are.
My son is gonna be 18 in October,
Okay.
and my daughter is now 15. She's gonna be 16 by the end of January next year, and my daughter is gonna be 7 in November.
Oh, that's great. And you still are in contact with your children in Botswana.
Actually, like when I was told that when you've done the work, your children will come. I gave birth to my daughter, and after my daughter was born in November, December was the first time that my children visited me here. And then shortly after, in that May, 2018 May, my daughter moved here, and then 2018 December, my children moved here. So I've been living with my children now. Yeah. So 29
Ending.
but now they've been here with me. And the interesting part is as soon as they came, another issue started, with my ex-husband, the divorce, and then he went his own way and did exactly what my ex-boyfriend did, being white and being in a white land. So he used his white privilege to do whatever that he does and separate me with my daughter. So it's kind of like, okay, so this is what it is, So it's one of those things. So I'm on this journey with my little daughter as well to see where that is gonna end up. I always say this, that the universe is quite interesting because after being separated with my husband, and at the moment where part of me was kind of like, I was angry on the other hand with his alcoholism. I felt like if this could
Right.
change, maybe things would be better. And I remember I was in a meditation, and the question that came through was, what part of him has a problem with his drinking? And I was like, what kind of question is that? But at that moment, I had this download. It's kind of like, I didn't have a problem with this man. I had a problem with my father. So a part of me that attracted these people was a part of me that was looking for its father. So it was kind of like I was attracting what I was. On the other hand, that's the love that I knew. When I said I am a daddy's girl, the love that I knew was the emotional, unavailable, alcoholic father. And that's what I attracted in my relationship. This is why I was in Botswana, a completely different continent, and I attracted the same behavior. And I was and I attracted the same behavior here in Germany and experiencing the same kind of challenges and all that. So it's some of the things that I had to heal and integrate my inner child and let go of all, because it's not about what we know consciously, it's the unconscious aspects. I always say the unconscious always win. As much as we may think we know, we want what we want. But sometimes when things are not working out, no matter what you're doing, you get to go back to the roots. Like, what is it that I know? And even when I'm saying I want love, what is that to experience as love? You know?
Do you know about the Oedipus and the Electra complex?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it came from Oedipus. Oedipus, killed his father and married his mother. The Electra was opposite. Kill your mother so you can marry your father. You know what I mean? Basically stating that you're always looking for someone that was like your father. And it's a subconscious
Absolutely.
thing. But you were able to figure that out and break that pattern.
Yeah.
That's good. So when did you start your programs and your coaching? Because it's obvious this is stuff that you've learned going through all this adversity.
Yeah, I've been doing this work for 7 years now. I would say one of the reasons why it got so hot in my marriage is because I was not willing to turn my back on myself, despite what my ex-husband said, what he believed and not believed in what I do. I just told him that without this work, because I felt like the one thing that held me to still be here is basically my spiritual work. And without it, I wouldn't know who I was. And also seeing what I did, turning my things around, healing my children and all that. It was like I want to speak at the top of my lungs and say that there is another way of being indeed. And it starts with us knowing who we are, embodying the power that is within us. It's not about, because the first thing when it comes to logic, some of the things when it comes to logic, it doesn't make sense. When you told me back then, when it comes to this whole case, and you say, just save your money, do the work on yourself, I would have said you are crazy. and went and paid many different lawyers, thousands and thousands of money, but still didn't get anything out of it, and many people maybe still doing the same thing where things are not working out, and the first thing is kind of like, I'm gonna go out there, whether it's you doing drugs, alcohol, or spending money on lawyers and all that. It doesn't bring anything. And when you look at it, even at the end of the day, whether even when I won, one thing that I always say is like, I'm still grateful that I didn't win as I somehow hoped, expected, wanted in the beginning, because I don't think I would have learned anything through it. First thing, I would have attached to who I was as in like the mother role. But on the other hand, through my journey, I got to learn that it's not about, it doesn't matter who you be. I still remember when I went to one of the therapists. I went to the therapist because my ex-husband went to the therapist and said, "Oh, my wife has a problem. She has PTSD and all that, so she needs some help." So when I went there, she's like, he told me, like, we gotta go for marriage counseling. So I'm like, okay, cool. If you're willing to do something for this marriage, let's go. So when I got there, the therapist is like, so what is happening? I heard you have PTSD. I got angry again. And don't even tell me that he came through with this nonsense. I don't have PTSD. I'm flipping angry that somebody who should have been there for me at the time when I needed him most, he was not there. He didn't come to the hospital. Second thing, I come home. My daughter was at the hospital. I come home after a cesarean. I stay in fifth floor. There's no lift or anything. It's no elevator. So I'm going to the fifth floor, but still, if I don't go to the hospital, no one is going to check on the child. When I talk to him about the drinking, he throws the keys at me and say, okay, then you drive. So like all these things, I was flipping angry. So, so yeah, I was the therapist, but at the end, I just like, sort of like, because I knew her before, we just kind of like made friends. I was like, I'll come talk to you if at all there's a need. But at the end, I didn't get any help in the sense of she was, when you are not healed, even if you're helping people, you're going to project your wounds or health from the woundedness, not necessarily from the neutrality. So what was stressing me with going to her and at times discussing some of the things, she was like, oh, call these offices and tell them how stressed you are and just apply for full custody and all that and share all these things. And I'm like, I'm not really there. He might be having a problem with alcohol and all that. And I know that. But on the other hand, I'm not here to take the child away from him. I just wish him to be a part of this child's life. So I don't know where I was coming from. Like I needed to share that. I don't know what question you asked. Yeah, but here I am. Yeah, here I am helping people. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but the most important thing, like I said, is to work on yourself, integrate your emotion, and also understand the holistical thing. Because if something is happening for us and we are making it about the messenger, which in this case, all these people were coming through with that mirror to say there is a part of you that you may not be seeing, but this is where you are creating your life from. So I can receive the message and still hold the space for whoever that they want to be. It's scary, and going through the divorce and all that is scary. But on the other hand, when I look at it, even the voices that were coming through in that time to say, what is it that you want? Why can't you just be happy with what you have? It was those people who were before me, my ancestors and all that. But on the other hand, that does not have to be my truth. And I say this because I received my divorce papers in my dream before I received them in my physical reality.
Wow.
Yeah. So I learned all these things. It's just a lot that happened, but more open in that path to say, these are the things that are holding people back, including even when I talk about breaking free from ancestral lineages. Even with me, it just started with that, where when I had to say my name, Gao Motsemme, there is a middle name that I use. I was called after my father's sister. And when I wanted to say that name, it was hard to say it out, and another portal opened while I'm trying to say it. And I connected with the time when I was born, when I was called this name, how my father's family had this thing of apathy, kind of like that, better than whatever, from my mother's side, and kind of like, oh, this woman, and then this child is going to be called by our name. So these are the things, when you look at it, I can look at it between me and my mom and say I was not fully accepted as I was. But when we look at it, it's also other energetical stuff that happens. And these are the people that I have the name from my father's side. So when it comes to ancestral imprints and all that, it comes even with your name. When you say your name, you are saying your name, you are saying your ancestral lineage's name, and it's part of your identity. And it's quite interesting. In my native language, when we say an ID, like an ID card is called Umang. Who are you? Right? So when we meet someone and like, who are you? Or give me the identity card, you identify with your name. And your name has many generational imprints that happen. So it's a big part of what I'm doing. And I believe that all this journey, as it was happening, it was part of the initiation of my work. Because when it comes to communication or even helping people, I can't hear what you're saying if my beliefs are in the upfront, like they're filtering whatever that you say or who you being. So when it comes to communication, the biggest thing is letting go of that judgment. That's when I can hear what you're saying. But if I'm coming in with whatever that I know, think is true and all that, then I'm not going to even hear what you're saying.
Wow. That totally reminds me of an episode, I think it was episode 30. The guy's name was Aiden Gabor, and he grew up in a mob family, basically in a crime family. That's how he grew up.
Mhm.
And I remember the question that I asked him. I was like, did you grow up knowing right from wrong, meaning morality and virality, or was your right from wrong determined by the family? So in other words, when the world says murder's wrong, if the family said, and if your right and wrong comes from the family, and the family says if this person does this to the family, then you need to whack him, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
You need to murder him. And that's
yeah,
right. That is absolutely right. So
yeah,
for at that point in his life, that's what he was taught. That's what it was. There was no ifs, ands, buts about it. If something happened, you need to take care of the family first every single time. And you need to remain loyal. And if that means killing someone, then you're going to kill that person.
yeah,
And that to them is absolutely right. When you're
yeah,
saying that you need to be free in order to coach, you need to be free of all your values and stuff and place yourself in their moralities and values and morals.
yeah,
That's that's quite a lot, to be
yeah.
able to separate yourself. But that kind of goes along with my next question as we start to wrap up is, where did you come up with the freedom illuminator embodiment queen?
Freedom Illuminator, that word just came through. I was just like lying down in the morning. I don't know what question I asked, but what came through was just that you're a freedom illuminator, you know, an embodiment queen. It has to do with me helping people to be in their body. Like when I'm talking about the human MRI psychic surgeon, when I connect with people, I connect with that. And we may be speaking, but on the other hand, is the body that is communicating to me. So I'm aware when somebody is disconnected from their body. And my role is to help them come back to the body. It's like, because when we go through life, when things happen, it's kind of like we're losing aspects of ourselves. So at times we're thinking that it's us, but many aspects of ourselves are lost along the way in relationships and all that. People want to talk about the sexual energy that at times when we're sleeping with people, we're taking all this, whether it's negative energy, whatever that other people are carrying, negative entities and all that. So there's just like a lot energetically that happens that informs us. So by doing this work, I help people to come into the body and feel safe in the body because there's a reason why people leave the body in the first place. And when it comes to creation, whatever that we desire to create, whatever that we desire to give birth to, the truth of it is you can't give birth to what you don't conceive. So if you are not in the body, it's going to be hard for you to manifest things in the physical reality. It's going to be an idea and it remains an idea, and it's going to be hard for you to give birth to it because it's the same process of having a child is still the same process of giving birth to something that you desire, that you want to see in physical form.
That's a brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant the way you were able to put that, and I can see it. And I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, if you go to GaoMotsemme.com and check out her website, the amount of testimonials that she has of people that have found themselves, have broken away from their patterns, have committed to marriages, and finding new relationships. It's incredible. You just have to scroll down and look at all the testimonials. This woman knows how to help you free yourself of the things that are keeping you from ultimate freedom and helping you find the person that you are meant to be. So check it out. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. And as you see, it's hername.com. And you got to see the first video. She's great. She sits there and talks to you like you're right there. And it's awesome. So you need to go check that out. She's got different programs, the fours of prosperity, power, pleasure, and blueprints. She has a sexual energy course. There's something in there. If you're stuck, you need to find yourself. You need to figure out where you want to go in life. This is the woman that's going to coach you into it, because she's going to come from the body and the spirituality versus the logical, right? And you might just find what you're looking for. So, last piece of advice you can give us, how?
That's a good question. There is a lot of things that I can say. As I started, it's not about information, but transformation. If you've been going around collecting information, reading lots of books, I believe you know by now that that cannot bring anything, because you can't heal what you don't see. You can't heal what you do not feel, So my advice is, things are not working out. So go to the website and book a call, and let's see what you need to do to align with yourself, because whatever that you need to create is that with who you are. You can't have and what I just want to also say is, here's the thing. The level that you are not fully free is the level that you are not fully loving. And that is the level that you are not fully growing. And that is the level that you are not fully joyful. So when you look at every aspect of your life, where you are showing up as a fake and phony aspect of yourself that does not exist. Be yourself so that you can align with what you deserve and desire. Because sometimes you are looking for something and you feel like it's not coming through. It's not coming through because you are being who you are not. If you want wealth and you are busy being a version that was accepted by the family, by the society, by the culture, then you are creating from the templates that you inherited, that you were born into. But when you choose to be yourself, then you get to align with that relationship blueprint, that wealth blueprint, that emotional and mental blueprint, that spiritual blueprint. Because some of us, we're talking about beliefs and all that, and it's all not ours. So it starts with, are you really being yourself? Are you in alignment with your unique signature blueprint? Because there is a reason why you chose the personality that you chose. And I truly believe that we choose our personality in alignment with what our soul is here to experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't be who you are. But along the way, we buy into the mask.
Excellently said. And that is one of the top tenets that she has, is becoming unapologetically you. And I love that. And thank you so much for being with us. How I cannot tell you the amount of takeaways that you've given us. And those will be all shared in the show notes. Thank you again. I will have her socials. I will have her website in the show notes. So go in there, click that. And while you're there, if you like this episode, please go ahead and share it with someone who might like it and can use it. Secondly, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, please go ahead and just leave us a quick review. I don't even care if it's good. If you leave us a bad review, you lift a review and I have feedback. So just tell us the truth. Be honest with yourself. If you liked it, great. If you didn't, tell us why. And we'll be able to make some adjustments if we need to. And if you're going to YouTube, then go ahead and share and subscribe and like and all the other good stuff. So thank you so much for being with us. And we will see you in the next one.